Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. What's up, DB? Are you buffering? What's going on?
Loading.
Yeah, got the little spinny wheel.
What's that?
Every day in my head. I'm good, man.
You doing all right?
I'm good. Trying to,
get the blood flowing a little bit?
Yeah, my bearings aren't too bad.
Okay.
Coming around. But I do think I know, like, kind of what's been the problem, like getting over the hump the last week, is I'm clearly not eating enough.
Yeah, you got to have energy.
Yeah. So.
But you feel sick, you don't want to eat?
Well, not so much anymore.
Okay.
Cough is a little raggedy. I steamed this morning in the shower a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
2 nights ago, I used a little Vicks. Went old school.
Vapo rub?
Yeah, they have so many little variations of it.
Yeah.
It's like plus this, plus that, plus this, plus that.
Yeah.
One time, like last Thursday, I was trying to find some quercetin. And there's like 95 different things. I'm like, I don't even have the capacity
to like sift through it all.
I don't.
Yeah.
So, nah, man. I think energy. I got to get back to my caloric intake is really, 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 really low.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're going on. We're just going on energy. Just so excited to be here.
I'm excited. Excited
to be here. I just watched a lot of basketball.
I think I maybe have lived in the Midwest too long.
Why, you just desensitized?
Well, no. So I woke up this morning and I'm rolling the trash out. It's trash day in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I walk outside and I go, oh, it's not bad today. It's 15 degrees outside, DB.
Yeah. Well, next week's going to be a heat wave for you. A high 30s, low 40s.
I might come in shorts.
Probably. That's what
it was. That's what?
That's what Shane would do. I forget you're different.
Yeah, a little bit. Not a lot we have in common. Although he's got to dress warm so we can go outside every once in a while.
Oh, come on, Shane.
Yeah. I was at, where was I checking out?
Grocery store?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, clearly, but I can't remember where it was. And the young person, I was going to take a guess. I don't want to be wrong. The young person I needed some ice.
Mm-hmm.
And the individual was like, yeah, got to give me a second to make sure I have the right key. I'm not going to stand out there and fumble with the keys. And I was like, yeah.
Fair.
It's probably a good idea.
Fair, yeah.
I didn't realize that people steal ice in the wintertime, but, man, they keep those chests locked.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. Just out there swiping
and
ice?
I've had to buy ice for, like, the last 4 months just because something's wrong with the
ice maker?
thing in the freezer.
Yeah.
I didn't love our ice anyway. It's like I'd put it in the...
Those things are so finicky.
I'd put it in the... My mom's fixed hers probably 7 times.
It's crazy.
I'm within one.
Yeah.
That ain't wet.
But now I just use her, she makes the really good round snowball ice. Those big balls that they put in like fancy drinks.
Yeah.
I could put 2 of those in my Yeti. It'll last a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, my ice.
Like the whiskey ice?
lasted like 41 minutes.
It's not good.
No, it's pretty sucky.
It's not good at all. Because then you end up with a watered-down drink.
Yeah.
Not trying to do that.
Yeah, man. So I'm just trying to... I got some electrolyte tabs in the car that I was thinking about popping one.
Yeah. Got to get rolling.
Just to recalibrate. Not, but
yeah.
just a little sluggish, a little weak.
You seem like you feel better.
My mood's always pretty sharp.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sketch.
There was one...
Thursday. Was it Thursday, Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I was just trying to...
get by?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the main goal that day was just to not have missed work.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. So
sometimes it's just the bare necessities. Just got to get by.
That was a song in a cartoon.
It was.
Bare necessities.
Bare necessities.
What was that in?
YouTube chat, help me out. What's bare necessities in?
Bare necessities.
I want to say is it Jungle Book?
Yep. That's a magnificent call.
Thank you. Well, it is about an Indian kid, so that helps.
You do know your cartoon songs, Damon.
I do actually. I hope and I pray that I make it someday, but I'm still just a bell on the hill.
What is that?
I don't know. It's from Schoolhouse Rock. It's a long time ago.
It's big Schoolhouse Rock guy.
I don't know. I am actually. I don't know why he's bringing that stuff up.
Why are you bringing up old stuff?
Islands in the stream. I don't even know what the world. Now, why would I have been singing that?
I don't even know.
No telling.
I don't even recognize what we're doing.
I was so glad that the fine folks we found out 2 secrets that I had been. I think everybody should listen to us.
I think so too.
Because then you would know, you wouldn't be surprised by Louisville. Because they said, Louisville's legit. Like, they're for real.
And they just smoked SMU.
Yeah. So you wouldn't have been surprised by that. And also you saw all the glory and the ick of that DePaul team that I was telling you about. Some nights those shots they shoot, like they go in.
Yeah.
And it looks horrible. But it goes in. And then they have nights like, Marquette and some games in which they look very comparable.
Against really good teams.
Then you have what happened last night.
They don't even look like a functional basketball program.
It looks really, really bad.
Can I make a weird analogy?
That was the DePaul team that went 9 minutes and 50 seconds of game time and scored 5 points.
That's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
And it got the response from you. Why are you watching?
It's a fair question.
At that point, I just found myself mesmerized.
Just like enamored by what's happening right now.
How long can this happen? Because they were playing another bad basketball.
Just morbid curiosity.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh my God, how bad can this get?
So it's starting to shape up just the way that we want it to. If you are trying to project the second half of the season
for Creighton.
Just the Big East in general.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, in particular, Creighton.
Yeah.
Or, as some say, Creighton.
Right?
I have 2 coaches that refuse to say T's.
Really?
Oh, it's annoying. And one of them's Queen, and I love him, and I just want to wring his neck. He always calls Quentin Warren Quentin.
Quentin?
I'm like, who is that?
Who's Quentin?
Stop calling him that. But it's my dude, so I give him the benefit.
Just call him Q. Just call him Q. Stop it.
Plus, Queen is mean. Like, Queen's one of those dudes, like, you'll wake up and, like, something will be missing. And you're like, that damn Queen. What happened to my fingers? You know what I mean? Like, you got to watch that little, too, because he'll get you. But it's like, who is that team? And now it kind of sets up. And we'll see, because I don't know how much you believe, and we haven't come to a consensus on what you feel about like St. John or my buddies last night on text calling Connecticut frauds. I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, can we talk about UConn for a second here?
No, because you and Maddie were having a field day, and I thought it was a little uncalled for.
Why?
So does he hate Hurley too?
I think everybody hates Hurley.
Golly, like he's. I wouldn't say he's not usually like that, but I felt like he was placating to you a little bit.
He likes to egg me on. Like if he knows I'm in sort of like my petty mood, he likes to really just like steer into that skid because he thinks it's funny. Speaking of which, please tell me in your degenerate sicko self that you watched Daniel Day Hurley's press conference last night.
So I didn't.
Oh my gosh.
No, but it's on social media.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a clown.
He had a bad night.
Yeah, he had a real bad. Listen, you know what we both like about people?
What's that?
Self-awareness, right? It's a big thing we both appreciate. It's self-awareness.
Excuse me.
The irony of Daniel Hurley, of Daniel Boone Hurley, complaining about freedom of movement is too rich. If it was a dessert, I'd send it back. I'd be like, I can't eat that. It's too rich. That dude has literally built his entire career on just mugging people and trusting the refs won't call it. That is how he made his bones. And now he's finally recruiting good players too, which good for him. But when he started out, he was just like, no, we're just going to assault you, and the refs aren't going to call all of it. That's the plan. And it's worked. Congratulations. But now that he's got good basketball players that can actually play offense, he goes, oh, I would really appreciate some freedom of movement here. Well, guess what, Daniel? You can't have it both ways. And then here's my favorite part. And by favorite, I mean the thing that made me want to kill him. My favorite part was he spends this entire diatribe, minutes long. This is not a short rant that he's going on here. Minutes long complaining about, we foul people, I know, but we're not getting any freedom of movement. And he's all this. And I don't know if it's a me thing. Maybe the refs just don't like me. And that would be unfair. And it would make me question the integrity of the game. I'd be really concerned about that. And this guy's a great ref. I don't know what happened. But if my players are getting punished because refs don't like me, that would really be too bad. And then after all of that, he goes, well, I'm not going to play the victim here. What have you been doing for the last 2 minutes, Dan?
Well,
do you know what the word victim means?
I always love when people say, like, they'll have this little meltdown, and then somebody inevitably will say, well, you can't really complain, or you can't cry, or you can't be a victim, and they'll immediately say they're not doing any of that.
Yeah. And it's like, no, you've literally been doing that for this entire time.
Like, that's what this last exchange has
all of it
been. The funny thing was, so I had to go back and just get kind of snippets, because clearly it was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll send it to you, because it's, of course, I think it was on either TikTok or maybe it was on Instagram Reels, which doesn't seem right, because sometimes Instagram Reels is like so old.
Yeah.
But this was fairly current. But they did what do you call it when you patch something in?
The stitch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was the scene where he was upset with the official. He had talked about it in the presser, which the don't turn your back on me.
Mm-hmm.
They stitched in Commodus from Gladiator.
How dare you turn your back on me?
I was in tears. I had to regain my balance in the kitchen.
Are you not entertained?
It was the funniest thing ever, and they did like the lips on Danny Hurley, but it sounded like Commodus. And the official turning around looking at him, because the official didn't appear to say much, except he looked at him like, man, who are you talking to?
Are you crazy?
So they did the official's face in Maximus's body. Oh, man, I got to send it to you.
Well, and here's the best part. It might be my favorite part, is he goes, and I don't really understand the camera thing. Why is the camera always on me? Lots of other people complain to the officials because you're a full-on psycho, Dan. Because you have these meltdowns on the sideline like a petulant child. That's why the camera's on you, dummy.
Hey,
like, what do you?
How do you think his peers feel hearing that this dude just went with I'm the best coach in the effing sport?
Okay, bud. All right. Maybe the best coach in the effing sport wouldn't make all these excuses.
You just don't hear people say that out loud a ton.
I mean, you don't hear.
That's the self-awareness thing, though, you're talking about.
Yeah, none of it existed there.
Yeah.
He has no idea that the reason his teams have been so good defensively is because he just cheats and counts on the refs not calling it. And then when he finally gets good players that can actually make shots, he's like, oh, how come we're not allowed to move freely? What about freedom of movement?
And I know they finally got a win last night, but T-Mac wants to know if you feel like will his meltdown help or hurt his team going forward?
Listen, 2-game winning streak, UCLA.
Yeah.
2-game winning streak, all right? Maybe took a little minute to set in.
Hey, so...
But you know what Mick Cronin wasn't? He wasn't not self-aware.
Do you know who?
And then he also didn't. This is what I'll give credit to Mick Cronin for.
Oh my goodness, you can't spin it, Ravi.
Yeah, no, I'm going to 100%. This is what I'll give credit to Mick Cronin for. He may have sat there and been like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we're going to do it. And if the season falls into a pit, we're kind of already there anyway, so who cares? But he didn't go, I'm not going to make excuses, though, or I'm not going to throw my players under the bus. He didn't say any of that. He's like, I threw my players under the bus. We'll see if they get up.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He's like, I'm the bus driver. I threw him under the bus, and then I drove over him. We'll see what happens next. I'll call the ambulance for him, though, because I'm a nice guy. Dan Hurley's like, I would never throw the refs under the bus as he's backing it up to roll back over him again. I would never blame the officiating as he's blaming the officiating.
I can't. My man Kevin wants me. I got to go back and find that. Don't turn your back on me. Gods. Gods.
How dare you turn your back on me?
She just wants.
Quintus, underrated. Underrated.
Yeah, I like Quintus.
He does okay. He screws up early, but he redeems himself.
Yeah, I'm a big Quintus guy.
Yeah, like he could have showed some loyalty early, and we wouldn't have been in this mess. But
big body language guy. You could tell he felt kind of some remorse after.
He's like, yeah, I kind of messed up when I murdered your wife and child. That was on me.
He stabbed my dude in the shoulder blade, man. He's got an unfair advantage. I think I'm riding with Maximus on this one.
Yeah, it was a late switch.
Yeah,
it was a late switch.
It cost him too.
You know, he almost allowed Maximus to get murdered.
I don't ever remember a coach
being that big of an a-hole.
No.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to finish your sentence for you.
Say what you got to say.
I'm the best effing coach in the sport.
Why didn't you take the Lakers job then, Dan?
Can you imagine?
He didn't say college. He said in the sport.
Yeah, I know.
We're just going to blanket statement.
I just don't. I mean, there's been some guys with a lot of hardware.
Yeah.
A lot of accomplishments that I've never heard say that.
You think Bill Self's like, hey, what's up, bud? You think Krzyzewski's like, I know I'm retired, but I could probably still coach circles around you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know who should have said it?
Jay Wright?
Hubert Davis.
No, Hubert Davis is not the best coach. Although that would be a good example of the lack of self-awareness.
Do you remember
Hubie?
Do you remember my meltdown last year about how they can't beat anybody in a game that's like 5 points or less?
Yeah.
That's a thing.
No, it is.
It's totally a thing.
Yeah, they lost to Miller North Zones, Hunter Salas last night. Although he didn't play great.
No,
he didn't shoot the ball well.
He was coming off a nice performance over the weekend too.
Yeah.
So with him, it's shot selection.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's always been
he takes a lot of tough shots.
Yeah.
I mean, it was another good night for
Omaha.
Yeah.
Chucky Hepburn 16 assists. We'll take it.
Again, I'm the guy, Ravi.
You're the guy?
I'm the guy. Hey.
You're right there.
I told you Louisville was good.
You did. You did tell me Louisville was good.
Well,
Jason Green had a little moment last night.
So
a couple buckets.
OJG is easily the most likable.
Oh, I like that guy a lot.
He's great.
Yeah, terrific.
He's great.
I don't know him at all, but he's the kind of basketball player I like. Glue guy.
So after the first two shots that Zugic had, were you like, go? Or you were like,
no,
you're like, man, what are you doing?
No, I just knew the tweets were going to be coming in, Like, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, my mentions are going to be a mess. But he played well. Nick Baugh thought he played well. First couple possessions didn't go great. Yeah. He's a good ball player.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
And then, of course, I get the Mason Miller plus minus stats, which people are real dumb. They don't even understand plus minus. Not even just in all the things I've talked about. But, okay, so in a game that you're up in, like, the 30-point range for a lot of it, Mason Miller being plus 10 or plus 12 is actually worse than the rest of the team. You know that, right? He had the 5th or 6th highest plus minus on the team.
Just going to dig in, huh?
Like, Kalkbrenner was plus 25. Ashworth was plus 24. McAndrew was like plus 22. Like, if you're plus 10 or 12 in a game that you win by 30 or up by 30 most of the game, you were actually detrimental to the effort. Do people understand this? That's how math works. Like, if you play almost 20 minutes, he played 17.
Oh, shit.
And you're plus 10 or 12 in those 17 minutes.
God bless Rob Anderson.
And then your team, when you stop playing for the last time, is up by more than double the amount of your plus minus. It means you were detrimental to that effort.
Hey,
That's how plus minus works. I don't know if people understand how numbers and scores and plus minus works. It seems like they don't. They think any plus minus By the way, he had 0 points last night, 1 shot attempt. I think he had 3 assists, though, so that's cute.
Yeah.
Like, good for him. I'm not even saying Mason Miller shouldn't play. Just effing chill on the Mason Miller stuff. Like, Feder Zugic is better than he is. I don't know what to tell you. He's a better basketball player. And he's something that Creighton needs, which is an extra offensive option. They didn't really need it last night because DePaul is trash. But in general, you're going to need that guy. I'm glad he got 15 minutes last night. Maybe at some point, Mac will be like, oh, this basketball player is good. I've seen him be good in practice all year. Maybe we should let this basketball player play basketball.
Were you surprised with are you good?
Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm cool.
Early in the rotation, like with what was going on in the backcourt with like Ty Davis.
I thought it was very opponent specific. I thought they're like, hey, this is a team that's probably not going to heat us up. We're probably not going to get the pressure that we are from other teams. We think we can kind of beat that's how I took it, is, hey, we should be able to beat these guys kind of regardless. Let's get some guys minutes that we might need later, which I appreciate. That's kind of what I've been advocating for, is get guys minutes that you might need later. I would like to see it a little more aggressively pushed throughout other games. Not saying UConn necessarily, but like Butler, some of these other ones where, hey, you have an opportunity to get these guys meaningful minutes. I'm glad that they did that last night. That's how I took it. And Ty Davis had a couple moments where he looked a little rough, but then he kind of cleaned it up, looked better. Like, that's what you have to do if you're Creighton, because you have to find, if you're going to be better than I think you are, you're going to have to find another guy that can handle the ball and create a little offense.
This has kind of just been who they've been, so I guess you could maybe get into like live ball versus non-live ball, but 14 turnovers, I mean.
For Creighton?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's too many.
But they have turned it over, though.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's part of what I'm talking about, though. Part of the reason they turn it over so much is because at any given time they have like 1.5 ball handlers on the floor.
I don't think that's it.
I do think that's it. If you have enough ball handlers, it's really hard to take care of the basketball. Like, the more ball handlers you have, typically you take better care of the ball because you can't just jump Ashworth at half court, commit a misdemeanor, and go take the ball away. That's my opinion, personally. What do I know?
And here I was thinking, well, we'll get to it coming out.
That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Hurrdat Sports Radio, coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, live here on the Pillar exterior stage, and reminding you to buckle that seatbelt. It prevents injuries and saves lives, but only when worn properly. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB.
What up?
You know another reason I hate Dan Hurley?
Why?
No, there's a lot of reasons. But I will also say, because I know this is coming because this person always chimes in, but so I made the joke about Dan Hurley and Greg McDermott last week when Creighton beat him, right? And this person always goes, which Dan Hurley, I don't know if you know, is 2-8 against Coach Mack. That's not very good. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's the worst record against any coach in any team in the country. I don't know if you know this.
I feel Petty Ravi coming on. We're setting a stage.
I don't know. This is just who I am. But this person goes, oh, Dan Hurley has 2 national titles, blah, 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 blah.
I can't wait to figure out who this person is because I doubt they talk like that.
I actually have no idea. I've never heard them speak, and I hope I never do. They're the worst. Shout out Josh Weiss. That's who it is. I don't know. He's one of my least favorite people on Twitter.
You know what, though? I got to tell you, I know you're going to think I'm defending him.
Yeah, this is your piece of cheese. Here it comes.
He drives me crazy, too. Like, he's kind of the contrarian. He'll say, hey, listening late.
We're building the turd sandwich. Here we go. Just stacking turds. I'm waiting for the cheese.
He's like, hey, just getting to it late. And it's always going to be something, it's always going to be like this opposite thought.
Yeah. He's the guy that told me he hates Steph Curry because he plays with too much joy.
But
that's a real quote. That's a real thing.
I'm telling you. Like, there are times sometimes like he makes me so mad.
It's the cheese.
Sometimes I don't even respond because I do think he's just swimming upstream. But at the end of the day, like, he's been like, we've interacted forever.
Yeah.
We have another friend that, I mean, he drives him up the wall.
Yeah.
Like I bet I think he muted him, and I'm like,
oh, I muted him a long time ago.
I'm like,
I don't even know how I saw
I'm
this.
like blankety blank. He's not that. He's like, nope, nope, no. I'm like, dude, it's fine. Like he comes around.
I don't know.
I don't
know.
I know.
I don't know, man.
I know.
Maybe he's a lovely person, like interaction wise. On Twitter, he's the worst, and that's the only frame of reference I have for him. Like maybe Dan Hurley is like a lovely husband and father. I have no idea. His public persona makes me
argue about last year. Was it his laundry? I don't know. You went in on something, and I was like, wow, like we don't even really know this guy.
He could be a lovely man. I'm sure he's a great father.
That's funny, John. JV drives you crazy.
Oh, the worst. Like Dan Hurley's two national championships make 2-8 against Greg McDermott even worse. Like Dave Lato should be 2-8 against Mac, right? And I don't even know if he was.
Oh boy.
Right? Like Dave Lato, that makes sense. Yeah, that checks out. Probably not great. Chris Mullen, 2-8 against Coach Mac makes total sense. The two national championships is what makes it funny, Josh. You ding dong. I'm sure he's a lovely person. Please keep listening.
Oh man.
We had a lot of people chime in on the stream. We appreciate all the love and attention here.
Keeping score. Kind of like Coach Rhule.
Yeah, TK, of course, TK loves this guy. I was actually going to say, like midstream, if basically Josh's Twitter persona, and I'm going to call his Twitter persona because I don't know him as a real person. Is that fair of me?
Yeah.
His Twitter persona is like what I'm describing. I don't know what he's like as a real person. It's like if TK.
And full disclosure, I don't either. I just know, like I've conversed with him for like years.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Like,
so just the longevity, you're like, I know it's been mostly poop.
I don't know. I don't think he means any ill will. What
is giving you that indication except for your own desire to see good in someone? Like, has there been anything he's done to be like, I think he's a good guy?
Yeah, like he'll get off to kind of some shaky starts, but like if you talk long enough, I don't know, man. I'm only gonna make it seem worse, so I'm not gonna do that.
It's fine. No, but I was gonna say it's like if TK and Amazing Daniel had like a petty bastard child, like or contrarian bastard child. Like that's Josh. On Twitter, at least. He might be a lovely man. He seems nice.
How did TK go from like GOAT to like on your I'm not feeling that guy list? TK drives me crazy.
I love TK, but I love that guy now from after the Josh. We're out. Tossing you out the club. You're going to have to earn your way back in. I'm not like DB. I'm the opposite of DB. You don't have to do one thing to stay in the club. You do one thing, you're out the club. We're polar opposites that way. I do love Matt Rhule's petty era, though.
Isn't that something?
I think that's part of the reason I like him, because I see, obviously he's much better at his job than I am at anything I do, and that's fine. But I see a little bit of myself in him. Like deep down, I do care about people. Like deep. It's buried. But on the surface, I'm very petty.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Matt Rhule is low-key kind of like that. Like, he's got a lot of petty in him, and he keeps receipts.
There's a ton in the reserve, too.
And
when I tell you, I get him, like, out of the normal.
Yeah, out of public context.
Yeah, so we're just – if he ever wins at a high level.
Yeah.
I mean, just look out. He will be the guy.
Will it be Signetti-esque?
You'll cheer for him. He'll say all the things out loud that you want people to defend Nebraska for.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this dude is super ready to champion the shield and cape.
That's why I love him.
That's why if nothing else, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because. And here's another reason why I want Nebraska to be super relevant and good is you want him as a spokesperson.
Yes, 100%.
Like you want him advocating for you.
That's part of the reason I like him. I like him representing us.
Yeah. because he's a really good speaker and he's super smart.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's typically not gonna like you'd let him rep you in court. I mean, there's very few people I would defer to, like if I wanted to defend an issue.
But you feel like he would represent you even better than you represent yourself.
I was like, okay, I'll tag out. I mean, he could be my hawk.
So not like Danny Hurley, who built his entire career on assaulting people defensively and then complains about freedom of movement. Like not that type of, like a little more self-aware than that.
Let it go. You never saw Frozen, did you?
No.
I didn't sit through it either. I just had to listen to my daughter sing.
Not for me.
I let it go.
Although I will shout out, I heard that the guy that created Frozen did so as something to like encourage, I think it was his daughter who had type 1 diabetes and was like going through some changes in her life. And so shout out.
Shout out.
We love diabetics around here.
Yeah.
Isaac Trout, that's my guy. Mark Andrews, I hope you're doing okay out there.
Boy, do you see his wife had to unplug?
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough out there.
It's so sad.
It is. I feel I do like the Bills fans they've been donating to the type 1 diabetes charity though that he represents as kind of like a kind gesture.
I think I could ride with Bills fans.
I think they're all right. I really do.
I think
they're a little crazy.
That's fine.
But I think they're good people.
I listened to it was a pregame. I was driving and it was Dawkins.
Yeah.
And who's obviously become kind of one of their vocal spokespeople, face of the deal. And he's talked about being in the community and how some of his teammates, they will get like gift baskets and like people drop stuff off at their door, or he just talked about like the Bills Mafia community. And I was like,
they seem pretty legit.
Yeah.
Like I'd ride.
And I just remember all the things that Harrison Phillips said about him.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I think I'd ride with those dudes.
Yeah.
Like they seem pretty legit. Like a little crazy, which I like, but deep down, down.
A little crazy.
Good guys.
You're super crazy.
Who, me?
Man.
That's what I like about Matt Rhule, though. There's just I'm the bizarro version of him. Like I'm more petty than good guy. He's more good guy than petty, but I like that we both keep receipts. That's what I like about it. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio, and maybe we'll set up the lineup even at some point coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live here from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and reminding you to get to supernovas.com. The Omaha Supernovas are back at home a week from Friday. Get your tickets at supernovas.com. Be a part of another record crowd at the CHI Health Center. That's supernovas.com to get your tickets. What's up, DB? You're giggling over there. I think that's the proper word. I think that's a giggle.
He still has it muted.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I figured out why I saw him because I went back and looked. So I have him muted also and have for a while. Basically, as soon as he said Steph Curry plays with too much joy, so I hate him, I was like, okay, you listen a lot, so I'm not going to block you, but I am definitely muting you. The reason I found it is when somebody replies to someone you've muted, it pops up. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I hadn't really seen a lot of that in my life lately. Didn't need to, but here we are with DB's piece of cheese.
Well, he's not my piece of cheese.
He's not your Huckleberry?
It's funny, too, because my other guy, he just was like, yeah, I was waiting for you to try to explain why you like him again, and then you just gave up, and I was like, yeah.
Because it's illogical. Like, it's illogical.
My thought process?
No, that you like him at all.
Oh, he's fine.
That's a lot of people. Like, that is your thought process?
I think it was like, I don't know if it was boxing. It was something drew me in. I still don't think he means ill will.
I feel like somebody could break into your house and steal all your food and be like, I'm sorry, dude, I was really hungry. And he'd be like, oh, man, I get it. Like, is there anything else I can get you? Oh, let me call Verz. They'll bring some pizzas over.
Guys,
you're
doing it.
I'm just saying. That's the vibe you're giving off right now.
That's what I'm giving off.
You're giving people a little too much benefit of the doubt here.
Oh, I laugh so hard. Because it's funny. Like, I'm basically laughing at people making fun of me for grace.
I'm making fun of you for being too good of a person, basically.
No, but I'm not though. That's the thing. Like, I'm very capable of Blandinoing it.
You're good in that sense.
I just pick. I have to be. It's particular.
Here's what it is. I think is you were extended a lot of grace at certain points in your life.
Yeah, so
Here's the thing, DB. You're the exception that proves the rule. Like most people, and I think you know this to be true, most people that were like in your headspace at that point in your life, they live there forever. That's just so I'm gonna play the odds.
I came back.
I'm gonna play the odds and be like, okay, if 99% of people stay in the Dean Blandino headspace, and I know the one that didn't, that means everybody else is staying there. That's how percentages work. Much like plus minus, they're deeply understood by people.
Everybody.
My guy was like, yeah, I still have it muted.
Coming up on the show today, we don't have Brian Christopherson muted. We would never. Husker 24/7.
No, he's funny.
At 8 o'clock, we love BC. Coming up at 8:30, Kevin Sjuts, 1011 News in Lincoln. 9 o'clock, we've got the one and only Kevin Kugler. Kevin Kugler. There we go.
Talking hoops. You know who I'm definitely asking him about?
Who?
Who's the one team that I have the most questions about in the Big Ten?
Ohio State.
Correct. I'm asking him about Ohio State.
Got a nice win.
I'm gonna ask you one more time.
Yeah. Are they good?
Are they good?
I have no idea. No earthly idea. That's kind of.
I feel like I say that once a week.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Who's the Big East equivalent?
Okay. So I need them to win.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that about Xavier.
I was going to say maybe Georgetown.
I know. I don't think. So I think.
You think Xavier's closer to being good than Georgetown?
Yeah, I think Maddie and I were a little premature on Georgetown.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because I was with him. I was like, sweet, let's hold hands. Like, yeah. I think Georgetown's pretty good. And that was in a loss a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who was that? That was
maybe UConn.
UConn or Marquette?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the top two teams in the league.
And he's like, okay, I've seen enough. I think they're good. And I'm like, I'm with you. I think they are too. But
yeah.
No, I made it. It might have
been conference play hit and
a little premature.
Here we go.
But I do think.
Mm-hmm. You think Xavier might be?
I need to. I want to see St. John's.
Okay.
So, but I ask every week because Ohio State will do something weird, whether it's the scramble comeback against Minnesota. What happened in the Wisconsin game when Tanji had to take over? Like, they show you these snippets of being really good, but then you rained on my gosh darn parade.
What'd I do?
Well, because I was like, hey, they ran down while we were talking hoops last night. They're like running down Purdue from behind, and then you hit me with you're not sure if Purdue is good. I think Purdue's good.
I don't really know. I think they're okay, but I don't really know because they've got some strange things on their resume. Like none of their losses are bad, right? So you go Marquette, that's fine.
They did cough up a good lead last night.
That's kind of the problem. It's not the losses, it's the watching them.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got losses to Marquette. Penn State's not a great loss, but it's not terrible. A&M, Auburn, Ohio State. Ohio State and Penn State are your worst losses. Not terrible, right? But you watch them and you go, I don't really know what's happening there. Like, I don't feel great about it. And I think they're going to be probably like between a 4 and a 6 seed in the tournament. They're kind of just there. Like, I don't think they're a threat to do anything either.
A 4 or a 6, 4 through 6.
That puts them somewhere between like 20th and 30th in the country. I think that's about where they're at. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're a threat to do anything real. Like, if they get the right matchups, they make a Sweet 16. If not, maybe a second-round loss. Like that, I think that's kind of who Purdue is.
I don't know. College basketball is just...
It is super weird. It's super weird. I don't know.
Would you, like today, you probably would make Duke the number 1 overall seed. Is Duke the number 1 overall seed? They play in a bad conference.
I mean, you might make the argument for Auburn because their resume is probably better.
Do you know how many games?
Because the SEC is good.
Do you know how many games Duke is going to win?
A lot. But, I mean, Auburn's 17-1. Yeah. Like, Auburn's going to win a lot of games,
There's a lot to play, though, in the SEC.
They're going to trip up more in the SEC.
That SEC, that was not a good-looking Mississippi State team last night. But
no.
That team has been top 20 all year.
Yeah. I mean, so On Ken Palm, Auburn's projected to go 27-4.
27-4.
Yeah, so that's pretty.
Does he have Duke at 30? Kenneth Pomeroy.
Let me check here. I would guess no, but
I bet you he does.
28-3.
Okay.
28-3.
So they're gonna stub their toe somewhere.
One more time, basically.
Certainly won't be Chapel Hill.
No, probably not.
Carolina will score about 58 against Duke.
Illinois on a neutral floor. Duke's got Illinois on a neutral floor. That could be the stuff. That could be where they stub their toe.
Illinois is capable,
especially if they're healthy by then. That's not till
Illinois overcame like this weird technical.
Yeah,
and it was in crunch time too. And Michigan State pushed it to like 74-68 maybe, or 76-70. And they ended up winning, I think, 80-78 or something?
Yeah, 80-78.
So it mattered, but it was kind of innocuous because it was going into break.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tried to come back and explain it, and Clark Kellogg, who I think I like more than most. Are people fed up with Clark Kellogg?
I don't have an issue with him. I feel very neutrally
I like CK.
towards Clark Kellogg. I don't have a problem with him, though. I know some people
were
dislike
trying to explain it, and I just was like, I wonder what Underwood said. But he did do the hand wave, and he said, "You're a joke."
Underwood does seem like a guy that could say some magic words and get himself in trouble.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I like Illinois.
Yeah, if they're healthy, they're dangerous. Like, that's a good team.
But the SEC is the one. It's just hard to.
Yeah, the SEC is pretty stacked. Like the way out for Auburn. I mean, starting Saturday with Tennessee, like, it's not easy. There's no freebies on that one. Ironically, the way that people talk about SEC football, SEC basketball actually is kind of that way this year. You got good teams. Even Vanderbilt, not bad. Not the case with SEC football, as Paul Feinbaum learned.
Oh,
the hard
Paul,
way.
Sometimes you just got to eat it.
Yeah.
You just got to eat it.
I'm a little disappointed he didn't fight harder.
Like, what could he say, though?
You just be like, it's been 2 years, Greeny. You want me to crown him the king because it's been 2 years? The SEC's been dominating for 15 years.
Do you know what I think?
That's what I would have done.
Do you know what I think it is?
What?
I think. I may be. This may be the good piece of cheese. I may be giving him too much credit.
Probably.
But I think he sees what's going on in the Big Ten, and he probably assumes that Ohio State, they're not going anywhere.
No, they probably aren't. But you kind of have to defend your brand a little bit too. Like, double down, Paul. That's who you are, man.
Yeah, but you can't come across. You can't be like.
He does the rest of the time. What's the difference? You think he comes across as super genuine the rest of the time?
Genuine is not the word that I was going to use, but the data's starting to mount against him. Like, you just would be being obtuse.
I'm just saying the sample size is small enough in 2 years that you could still make that argument.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. Not that I'm saying I would.
Well, he can't ride. I don't think he feels comfortable riding Bama.
Can't. Absolutely not. But you say, hey, this is down year for Georgia. They'll be back. Kirby Smart, blah, 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 whatever.
Now, that's.
I mean, you can make that argument.
The case I would make.
Florida's on the way back up. Billy Napier figured it out.
I don't think there's a person on the planet that trusts Florida, and they're going to be preseason top 10.
Brian Edwards does. He loves them. They're his favorite. So we know that. We know that about him.
Easier for you to cheer for Hurley or B. Edwards to cheer for Napier?
Ooh, probably easier for B. Edwards, because if Napier's good, he's wrong, but his team's good. Hurley being good gets me nothing. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Brian Christopherson coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We're joined now by Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. What's up, BC?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Pete Sizzle, what's up, bud? How you warmed back up? You ready to go? How's your freedom of movement? Is it pretty good?
Yeah, that was a show last night. My freedom of movement is good. I'm not going to declare I'm the best sports writer in the area or anything like that on the radio, so I'll stay humble.
I told 50 years, B. And I've probably only been paying attention to sports for 47 of them. I've never heard a coach make that declaration in real time. Never.
Yeah, that's a new one, I think. That's why we watch, though, right? There's always something that pops up every week, and you're like, oh, man, that might be new, and you got to process, like, oh, maybe I heard that at one point from Pat Riley or something, and you're like, no, he didn't say that either. Pat Riley didn't say that when Showtime was rolling. So I think only Hurley has said that, and I think that's where that one came out, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is it's not true.
Goes back to that whole self-awareness thing I was talking about.
You know what I mean? Like, not only is it so out, like it's not.
See, now that would have been great if the ref in the moment had been like, no, that's not right. And then he like gets into like a list of like 5. He's like, Bill Self, I think he starts like naming off like 5 people he thinks are better.
That's the first person Ravi said to. He's like, so you think Bill Self's thinking like, yeah, that guy's pretty good. It's
an easy go-to name to poll when you're trying to think of top coaches, I guess. But yeah, that was interesting. But he's a different sort. He's got that bravado about him, I guess.
That's a nice way to put it. A different sort.
Yeah, it's. Mm-hmm. We see we keep watching. We watch and we're gonna see Saint in all his glory, up close and personal. We've seen Tanji last night again. We've seen Hunter. We've seen Chucky. These Jason Green, right there before our very eyes. Isaac Trout, like not a bad stretch when you're kind of watching college basketball. And outside, and Wrightsel's been banged up for a good team with that Achilles, but not a bad stretch for basketball, right? UCLA gets William Kyle, the third back. Like it's a lot going on in with local flair.
Yeah, there is. Feel good for all those guys. It's an interesting time where everybody kind of gets spread out all over the place, and actually, in a way, you'll end up watching some local guy at like 10 p.m. before you're going to bed. It's kind of interesting that way, but they've all. It feels like every week someone's sort of on a surge or really getting some love. I know Chucky's getting a lot of it right now, and St. Thomas has played good for USC, and he's going to be an important guy for Nebraska to handle here tonight. So I always root for the people who kind of claim the 402 or have been from here, and so I'm glad for it.
BC, is there any part of you that kind of watches these guys all across the country and thinks to yourself, man, would be really nice if Nebraska had some of these dudes?
Would you stop?
I'm just asking the question. Like it's a fair question. Because especially when you're missing out on them twice, right? Like you miss them coming out of high school, you miss them on the bounce back. Like that's tough.
Yeah, there's definitely occasions where a guy's on a heater, and you're thinking like, how would he fit within what they have right now? And sometimes that fits better than others, but certainly there's examples of that. And I would guarantee you coaches feel the same way on occasion, where they're like, oh man, that would have been nice, if he were plugged in here. But guys may have to make their call for what works for them. And then, here at Nebraska, you got to proceed with the guys you have. And I know Fred, I know you weren't trying to get me to get into this, but I know he likes this team, and he thinks they are better than they've represented the last couple of weeks. And now it's up to them to go prove it. I think, and I'm kind of segueing here, but their rank or their net is 51. You see them when you look at these like bubble lists and stuff, you'll see them first 4 out or on there. And I actually asked Fred that the other day. I said, I know you want to get right into the details of the game right in front of you, but is there that point where you bring up the big picture to your guys? Like, look, we're right here. If you're a competitor, you don't mind being in this spot, even though it's been a couple tough 2 weeks. And they have acknowledged that. So they're in a position, and they gotta get the axe out and start chopping wood tonight.
Yeah. And listen, you're getting a team, I think, and USC was kind of funny. They're getting healthy, but you look at the Big Ten as a whole, and I think we like who we like at the top, at the top, right? You like Michigan State. I think people like Michigan. We like Illinois. Still not really sure, and we're going to talk to Kevin Kugler at 9, and I'm still not sure what to make of Ohio State. I think they're pretty good. I think Wisconsin is pretty good. There's going to be a tricky one tonight. I think Indiana and Northwestern play tonight in that rivalry, and you never I think Northwestern is favored, which is it's just a weird league. What's the point that you think Nebraska's got to get to not be bubblicious? I used to think it was 10. You could probably talk me into 9. The path is daunting regardless. It's got to start tonight clearly, but what is the break line, do you think, right now for the Big Ten?
I think within your question, you said it. I was with you. If you said right, before the season, what's the number? I would have said, well, you got to get to 10. I always feel like you got to get 500 in the league. And that I know there's cases where you don't have to be there, but it's where you sort of feel more comfortable. I do think it's maybe 9, but there's a lot of lifting to do at this point still. You're 2-5 right now, and that's why tonight is got to have it type of game, especially when you look at the schedule. You go to Wisconsin, then it's Illinois, then at Oregon. Those are the next 3 for Nebraska after this one, and all those are quad 1 games. I think all those, at least as of yesterday, all 3 of those teams after tonight that Nebraska plays had a net of 22 or higher, and so there's opportunity there, but let's say Nebraska does handle business tonight and won one of those 3. I think the reaction around here would be kind of like feeling down in the dumps because, they're still 4-7 at that point. But I think their metrics actually would be okay at that moment. So that leads you to believe you if you got one of those quad 1 wins and tonight and you're 4-7 going to the stretch, I think you could get to 9 or so. And get in, but we'll see how it kind of plays out. I'll have teams are going to knock each other around a little bit, but Huskers got to just get back to playing with that sort of carrying the hammer as they seem to have done for a long time in PBA, and they didn't do it last week like we're used to seeing. And you got to just say to yourself, all right, time to start a new streak here. The last one's gone. Let's go again.
It's interesting. I think of the 4-game skid, which game bothers you the least? Because I'd probably try to make the case it was Maryland. Even though I felt like that was one definitely winnable,
gettable,
clearly gettable, but it didn't leave as bad a taste in my mouth as maybe some of the others. Is there something in the 4 where you're like, okay, I can build and go glass half full?
Maryland bothered me the least from how Nebraska competed and how they represented themselves in the game. So the outcome that bothered me the least was actually Purdue, just because even though it was just so lopsided and a ridiculous score, I didn't have much hope going into that. And that's probably a bad way to look at it because, Purdue got beat last night at home. But just outside looking in, I wasn't expecting as much from that game, and so it was a disappointing showing, don't get me wrong, but I shrugged my shoulders a little bit more about it. But I get the point about Maryland because I felt like even after the game when you heard Hoiberg talk, he saw okay, this is more the team that I expect. They're doing the things that I think is going to make this a good basketball team the rest of the way. And so I think as a coach, whenever you see that, and there's pieces you can take from a game, even in defeat, that are going to be useful going forward, you don't feel quite as bad. So that's probably the right answer, the Maryland game. Nonetheless, man, that's an opportunity that just slips through your grasp in the last 50 seconds. And I was talking about it with Schaefer the other day. It just feels like Nebraska has won some clutch games at PBA over the last year. Don't get me wrong, where they've been up 4 or 5 with 2 minutes left and, someone hits a big 3 to sort of lock it up. I do feel like the Huskers have really struggled in these games, and there's been a few of them where it's tied with like a minute left, and it can go either way. And that last minute, it just seems like always slipped in the wrong direction. So they're going to need to grab a couple of games like that, where it's a nail biter, someone hits a shot with 5 seconds left. I think there's going to be some moment like that still in the season, and Nebraska's got to have it, where it's sort of always gone to the other jersey so far.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, you kind of touched on a little bit there, some of the commonalities you've seen throughout the season, but it felt like, at least in the 4-game losing streak, a lot of the losses felt a little different than one another. Can you kind of put your finger on a common thread, whether it's in the 4-game losing streak or throughout the course of the season, that's been the most concerning for you, or is it all over the place?
I think one common thread, and Hoiberg said it after the Rutgers game, when they're playing really good defense, they're crashing hard, and the other team might get their shots up behind the arc. But like, even if you go back to the Creighton game, it felt like Nebraska was coming so hard after everything. They were forcing very difficult passes. They were so active with their hands. There's all these deflections. There was nothing comfortable, even though there were shots to be had for the offense. And if you look at the losses, for whatever reason, that's waned a little bit defensively in a lot of those games, where teams have been allowed to make like kind of that looping pass, and the guy has time and the space to set up and shoot. And that's why teams hit 48 3-pointers on you over a stretch of 3 games, and so I feel like if they're going to be that team they want, that identity, gritty, grimy, it's just got to be so active and so intense on that end of the floor, where every pass feels the opposition feels like the degree of difficulty goes up. And so that's the biggest thing to me, is just being active, getting deflections, and making teams have to make great passes to get shots. And I don't think that's always been the case.
BC, do you like like's not the word, okay, students are back, it's 8 p.m. tip, it's a little late, it's extremely important, obviously, at home. Do you like how it sets up in any fashion?
Yeah, I do. I thought the arena, I would never knock the Husker Hoops fans, because those folks have stood by this program. I've been to games where Husker basketball has been, below 500, really stinking it up, and you'll still get, 8, 9, 10,000 for a game, and that would not be everywhere. I did think, and I think people who were in the arena that wore their red would say it wasn't as lively against Rutgers, and it, for whatever reason, because it was a good game, actually. It was a game where I think you could add that impact, and it might have been because the defensive end was lacking a little bit, and they couldn't shut the faucet off on some of those superstars, and so people never got comfortable. But I think tonight there will be a little bit, not a little bit, I think there will be a sense of desperation in the gym. And the key, though, is the team has to, in the first 8 minutes of this game, show that they feel the same way. Because when this thing is really rolled, they really do feed off each other. Like that, they make some plays on the defensive end. That crowd appreciates it. Sammy Hoiberg comes in and gets a steal or something, and it lifts people up. And then there's a lull at some point, and the crowd lifts Nebraska up, the team. And so they do need that back, and I think the students being in the gym was going to help. And it looks like they got some sweet crew necks, too. That beats they're giving out crew necks to the students. And when I was a student at UNL, I got like a Haynes Kamani is my friend T-shirt, I think. So I think they've upgraded.
I don't know. Kamani is my friend is peak pun, and you got to appreciate that. Like, I get the quality of the T-shirt. No offense to Haynes, may not have been great.
Yeah.
But
maybe it wasn't Haynes, but yeah, that's where I'm going, Ravi. It was a different, the quality. I think these kids got to appreciate the quality of material they're getting these days. They're going to be getting like dry fit stuff at some of these events, and I was getting this stuff where you like if you go sweating in a little bit, you can't wear the shirt again. But it was a cool phrase they had. They had one for Stephon Bradford too. I can't remember specifically. That was maybe a little edgy that you couldn't get away with now. But nonetheless, they're going to have some cool crew necks tonight, and I'm happy for them, even if I feel like it's better quality than I got.
Excuse me.
BC, I have to ask this because, and I'm not trying to be a hater here, but I'm sitting here and I watch this Nebraska team and I go, okay, they don't seem to be quite good enough defensively to hang their hat on their defense. They don't seem to be quite dynamic enough offensively to get into these shootouts with Rutgers and Iowa. Like, where does that leave them? Or am I misrepresenting?
No, I think it's a worry spot. I think there's a lot of skeptics who are saying the same thing right now, and it's up to this team to prove that they do have answers to a couple of those things. And I feel like there is a danger zone with this team, though, because they can do one thing well for a little while, and then the other thing maybe betrays them. You know what I mean? So it's been sort of a mismatch of that sort of stuff. They're going to need some guys to maybe hit a few more shots than they have, and I don't know how else to say it. Like, I got on here the day after the Iowa game, and Juwan Gary played his butt off in that game for 13 and 13, but he was also 5 of 21 from the field. And I remember we were talking about it was like they didn't settle and they just kind of threw up some trash at the rim sometimes and weren't patient with it. They've really got to value every possession. They've had these moments in games they've lost where, like, you can go back to St. Mary's where they gave away like 3 or 4 possessions in a row and like a critical stretch in the second half on just sort of careless stuff. And it all kind of adds up over the season. And because of the question you asked, your margin for error isn't great enough that you can afford to do that. So they really do have to, think of every time they have the ball as sort of a precious situation, and obviously can't overthink it. But tonight has to be a night where you keep the turnovers down, you play smart, you play good around the rim, and hopefully Sejan hits a few too.
All right, so we have a kind of a body of work to work with watching Nebraska basketball. We've talked about kind of what they are, what they might not be, what we need them to be. If I take out Juwan Gary and I take out Bryce, and for laughs and giggles, you're like, it'd be interesting to see if this guy could do this in order to help Nebraska get wins. Who would you pick, and what would it be in this next portion of the basketball season for Nebraska?
Well, my go-to, but it's kind of played out, is a Sejan, but they need something else with it. And I thought Andrew Morgan, especially in that first half on Sunday, I mean, you got to give him credit. He was really efficient. I think he was 7 of his first 8, and he had 17 points. They've sort of had this deal, though. It happened with Juwan against Rutgers, and then it happened with Morgan on Sunday, where Juwan had like 20 points, with 16 minutes left on Thursday last week, and that's where it ended. Not that he didn't do other stuff, but, it shut off there, and it shut off for Andrew too. And so I do think they've sort of missed those games where someone unexpected, like last year, would pop up each night and that guy suddenly would have 22 or something. Or they've sort of missed, I really believe, Rink Math and just the threat that he could hit that outside shot and how it spaced the floor and it opened so much other things. I think Andrew Morgan, to your question, is a guy that has always interested me this year. He's pretty effective and efficient in scoring it in certain spots. He missed a couple from behind the arc on Sunday that rimmed out. And I guess I wonder if there's just one other notch for him to go that maybe helps this team. We talk about chasing 3 with football of last year. Nebraska's lost 3 games by 3 points and won in overtime to Iowa. A guy like him hits an outside shot. A guy like Burke hits one more than you expect. That could be all the difference for this team.
I'm right there with you. Ravi's over here laughing at me. I promised him you and I did not have this conversation. But I'm saying, like, I've moved off on wanting kind of Burkay to add some scoring punch, even though he fooled me again by hitting another early three at Maryland. But I am on Morgan and points in the paint because I do think he's efficient with the ball. He's not one of those guys. He doesn't have to have it a ton to be effective. I would love to see him kind of evolve to maybe help them get some easier baskets.
Yep. And, it'll be interesting what they do tonight because I think they're a little beat up. Fred didn't want to say who could, be questionable, but he said there were some guys nursing stuff that were out the other day, and so that's going to be something to watch. Aaron Eulis played a lot on Sunday. Obviously had 10 assists, had the bad turnover late, but played a good game other than that. So I'm curious, how those minutes shake up at point guard, with him and Wooster and all that. They even had both of them on the floor at one point against Maryland's pressure. So they got some interesting decisions to make with it. The question you asked, I don't think there's an easy answer. I guess that's the tough part.
If you would have said, to your point, if you would have said, well, maybe Eulis turns into a little bit of a scoring option, right? Because he can do some other things. I'm just if he could only score, right? There's just always these little tweaks you would add to the current guys to get the best version of what you want to get wins.
Yeah, I don't want to knock them. Right now with the point guard spot, there was excitement, I think, going into the year. Okay, a true point guard, this is going to be fun. There's obviously good parts to it, but both guys have sort of struggled to finish, and actually struggled at the free throw line too in some key moments.
That's the thing.
And I mean that kills you in these tight games when your point guard's an okay free throw shooter at best. And so, Raleigh's had some great moments, but you talk about a player who's got to be just the top of his game and the things that he's good at has to be accentuated. It's Raleigh Wooster. I mean, he's got to be a really good player for this team down the stretch and do what he does well. And that's basically it. Everybody's got to really excel at their gifts and get the most out of it.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, guys.
Thanks, B.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Good morning, boys. Somehow I've gone down the rabbit hole of watching Randy Johnson pitching videos this morning. No idea how that happened on YouTube.
You get in the mood with the Hall of Fame voting or what?
That's how it started, pulling up old clips from Billy Wagner, CC Sabathia, and Ichiro, and somehow you end up on, 1992 Randy Johnson, tall, skinny, lefty pitching videos.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting for a guy that was that great? I still think in the pantheon of going way back and talking greats, he is often overlooked.
He is, but he's not if you do the immaculate grid, because he's a guy that played for so many different teams. So he's a common one. That's part of the daily routine. I know you guys have Andy Kindy on every other Wednesday also, and he's on the same text thread with the grid results every single day. And it's one of those guys that you don't think about till you think about, if you know what I'm saying. So sometimes Andy or one of the other guys will have Randy Johnson on one of the squares. How did I not think of him? Hall of Famer, amazing pitcher, and played for a lot of teams, so very useful.
So do you obviously, if you're and I'm glad you're on baseball because I love it. If you're an Alex Rodriguez or a Manny Ramirez fan, not a good day yesterday, right, in terms of voting. It just does not feel like the voters are going to budge.
Nope. Those are two. Nope. That's I don't know. The voter, and how did Ichiro, by the way?
I couldn't believe it.
How is he not a unanimous pick?
I couldn't believe
it. Listen, this isn't what we brought you on to talk about, but since we're here, sorry, I've been in a petty mood this morning, Kevin. I can't, can we just take a minute to rebuke the baseball writers and their holier-than-thou nonsense? Because there's always somebody grandstanding and being like, oh, well, I didn't think he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, so I didn't vote for him this time. And Billy Wagner was only his final ballot Hall of Famer. He couldn't have possibly got, like, what's the difference? Once you're in. Who cares?
I know, and that opens up a whole nother conversation of like the value of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Just because, like the guys you just mentioned, DB, like in my brain they're Hall of Famers, but in the writer's brain apparently not. And so some people even shame, how valuable the Baseball Hall of Fame really is to substantiate a career, because there are those grandstanders, and there are some guys who make some puzzling votes, like not voting Ichiro first ballot. Having been to Cooperstown, it's like one of those, if you're a baseball guy like myself, just stepping in the building, like instantly the goosebumps happen and they don't leave you. In fact, the day I was there was an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair who like slowly wandered through the entire facility. And as they were in the area with all the busts, he was out loud verbalizing like everything he remembered about all the different guys. We're talking about Mel Ott and Al Kaline and Hank Greenberg and just like it was incredible. This dude lived for baseball, and just to see him in that building, it was so cool for me. And, I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is really cool. Having been there and for what it stands for that sport, I think it's a pretty awesome thing.
So a guy that I've often made the case for, and I think it may have gotten worse since the managerial kind of snafu, is Beltran in or out for you?
Nah, he's out. I don't know. Like, was he elite? I don't know that he was elite. He was good. I mean, he had a couple of great years, but I don't know that he was elite.
So this is kind of in my wheelhouse, and I get upset because he's a much better version of Reggie Jackson, and Reggie Jackson is in, and I get the eras, right? But baseball is the one sport that doesn't really seem to care, right? It is so.
The numbers are the numbers.
Numbers are the numbers-driven sport. I don't know about elite, but I certainly think Beltran is a Hall of. Kev, he was the only guy on the ballot coming back for the third time outside of Wagner that had more than 40% of the votes each time. Like, I think when he retired, most people thought he was in. I think after the managerial deal, people were kind of like, I don't know. But I don't think one had anything to do with the other. That's just my feel.
You can get votes and be really good. I mean, you need so many votes to be elite. You know what I mean?
It's your delivery. Yes, Kevin, I get it.
I mean, I will say, I think it was, and this is a small period of time, I think it was 2004 for the Astros. There was a stretch there, especially in the postseason, where he may have been the best player in the sport for like a month, which I get it's a small sample size, but it was in October. We weigh October performances super heavily. But if you think Beltran's out, where are you at on Andrew Jones?
Okay. Well, now we're going apples to apples, aren't we?
I'm trying,
Well, Beltran's he's gonna be a 70 WAR 50 jaw guy. Like, those guys are in.
Are they? I don't know. I'm mixed on Andrew Jones.
So I saw somebody say, and I don't know if this is right or not because I was looking at it. I saw somebody say that if Andrew Jones had retired after 11 years, he's in, no questions asked. But because he hung on for like 5 or 6 more mediocre years, we have kind of a bad taste in our mouth. But if you don't have those years, he doesn't get over 400 home runs, which I think matters in people's heads.
Well, like, that doesn't matter for Beltran, and he has 2,700 hits.
Like, Andrew Jones is a really strange case because he was also the best defensive center fielder in baseball for a stretch, and then he just slid by on reputation for another stretch where he wasn't very good. Like, he's a really strange guy.
He is, and there's no question in my mind. If he retires after 11 years, like, he is in the Hall of Fame, 1,000%. Defensively, I'd say Andrew Jones was better than Carlos Beltran.
Yes,
I don't like going side by side with the guy.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, and I can't even identify why or make a good argument for one or the other, but my heart tells me Andrew Jones has a better and more compelling case to be in the Hall of Fame than Carlos Beltran.
2,500 hits, 300 home runs, 200 stolen bases, 115 OPS plus as a center fielder. Willie Mays and Carlos Beltran. Just saying.
Don't bring numbers into this.
Hey, I'm cool.
Don't bring your facts here, DB.
Hey, let me ask you something. Speaking of numbers, I want to go time because they're back on campus, and I think they were sorely missed. Normally, we would kind of be a little grumble buggy about the 8 p.m. tip tonight for SC, but between the students coming back and the dire straits for Nebraska basketball, nighttime set, like this could be a pretty good environment tonight, don't you think, for Nebraska basketball?
It could be because Nebraska really needs to win this game. It's a hugely important game in the grand scheme of the entire schedule, especially given the fact that the Huskers lost to Rutgers a week ago at home with no students there. I said after that game, that doesn't that the roof is not falling in for Nebraska basketball, but I said the two most important games on the schedule after the Rutgers loss were the next two home games. USC coming to Lincoln, and then next week they've got Illinois. I think that's a difficult task next week with the Fighting Illini in Lincoln, but I think USC, on paper, these are two very even teams. Both average 77 a game. They shoot it about the same. Nebraska rebounds better. USC maybe has a little bit more balance. 5 players averaging, 10 plus. So I just feel like it should be charged up, especially as you mentioned, the students are back in town. However, I don't know, how big of a factor will that be? Because if you think back to last year, Nebraska's win against Purdue at home, that was before students returned. Mm-hmm. And they've had notable wins in Lincoln without the students there.
Kevin, I look at this Nebraska team a lot, and we keep kind of asking this question, like, who can step up? We see flashes from different guys, right? But is it realistic, considering most of these guys are older, that all of a sudden something's going to click for one of them and have them consistently become someone they've never really been?
I don't know that it's somebody stepping up. I think it's maybe featuring a player, Andrew Morgan, a little bit more than what they have. I think that they just need to. For me, the 4-game skid has highlighted the absence of rink mass more than anything, because he could score in the post, he could score outside, and I think the Huskers, to have sustained success down the stretch of this season, they must be able to score inside. And right now, their best offensive weapon, in my opinion, in the post is Andrew Morgan. So maybe running the offense through him a little bit more, or maybe creating plays to get him the ball inside. Because Jawan's going to get his, Bryce is going to get his, but where's the scoring going to come from? Inside, because they have to do that so defenses can respect that and then open up more opportunities for Jawan and Bryce.
That's Kevin Sjuts, 10-11 News in Lincoln. Kevin, appreciate the baseball talk, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Good stuff, Kev.
Didn't know that we'd go there, but it was great.
Appreciate you.
That's Kevin Sjuts, 10-11 News in Lincoln. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and brought to you by our friends at Centris Federal Credit Union. Make sure you get to centrisfcu.org to check out all they've got to offer, especially if you're looking for a house, whether it's first-time homebuyer, dream house, or just trying to refinance your current mortgage. They've got experts to get you covered, because there's a lot of options, and it's really hard for you to know what's right for you. That's why Centris has you covered. CentrisFCU.org. DB.
What up?
So I'd like
little Manny Ramirez.
No, I don't have a problem with Manny not making it.
No.
He got caught twice. I have a problem with the guys that didn't get caught not making it, right? I have a problem with the people feeling like Andy Pettit somehow is on higher ground than Barry Bonds.
For coming clean, you mean?
Yeah, for actually testing positive.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh, I just did it the one time. Like, okay, we're supposed to believe you just did it the one time? Like, all of a sudden that's like, oh, I only got caught once, so I only have to admit to doing it one time. I was coming back from an injury, whatever. I don't care. Andy Pettit, you got caught, right? Barry Bonds did never get caught. But somehow Andy Pettit's supposed to make it to the Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds isn't? Like, what are we doing here? So I don't have a problem with Manny not making it. I don't have a problem with A-Rod not making it. If you get caught.
I mean, they're not even close, too. So
yeah, they're in the 30s.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, they're in the 30%. They're not going to make it, right? I don't have an issue with that. If you get caught, if you're dumb enough to get caught, you shouldn't make it. That's the penalty for being stupid. Sorry. But, I don't understand this sentiment of guys that did get caught that we just like better should be making the Hall of Fame. Like, that's dumb to me. I also think the Writers Association in general is pretty dumb. Like, they just don't – I don't think they know what they're doing, and it's a stupid thing, right? They've got this – I mean, the one guy that didn't vote for Ichiro, is there any world in which Ichiro is not a Hall of Famer? Is there any version of his career, that the way it played out, that he's not a Hall of Famer?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
So what's the point? What point are you trying to make by not voting for him? Also, is there any world in which he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer? Like, can you even make that argument? Because that's what it usually is. It's like, oh, I didn't feel like he was a first ballot guy. Somebody didn't vote for Griffey on the first one. And I can make a better argument for Griffey not being first ballot because of all the injuries and not really living up to what he could have been and having a really rough back half of his career than I can for Ichiro. And I'm a huge Griffey guy. I love Griffey. There's a better argument for him not being first ballot. He also missed one vote than I can for Ichiro. There's no world in which Ichiro, he was the best at the thing he did, maybe ever. Like, contact hitter, one of the best that's ever done it.
Yeah, I won't give you a ton of pushback on that.
I mean, I'm not going back to like George Sisler here, but he's that's the guy whose record he broke, right?
That's a heck of a pull.
Like, I don't understand it. There's some weird self-righteousness thing amongst baseball writers that I could really do without. I don't need you to be my morality police. You put Ty Cobb in, all right? You've lost whatever footing you have to judge people. Go ahead and just give Ichiro all the votes. I'm over it.
Amazing, Daniel. Hot take. Hall of Fames are stupid. I can't think of anything I care about less than sports other than maybe salaries. All right, Daniel. Buzzkill.
You're going to be shocked that he's being contrarian here. I'm stunned.
So Daniel's different. Here I go vouching.
Here's the cheese.
He doesn't necessarily say the opposite. That's not kind of what it is. It's kind of either next level or a different way to look at it. It's not always like, well, you said, so I think.
He doesn't always do the exact opposite.
Yeah,
You're correct.
Yeah, that's not him.
He is always a zag when you're zigging. Always.
Well, I think he's just salmon by nature. I mean, look at him
Swimming upstream.
Yes.
Hall of Fames are good. I mean,
I thought you meant like Tim Salmon, and I was like, he's not a Hall of Famer.
Sockeye.
it's a great way for the player or whoever to put a close on their career. And sometimes those players may not have gone out, retired the way they wanted to retire. So it's a good way to end their career if they make it in.
I think Hall of Fames matter. I do. If you like the sport, the Hall of Fames matter.
And some are a little more prestigious than others.
Yeah, Basketball Hall of Fame is not prestigious at all. Antoine Jameson made the Hall of Fame.
Wow, so the ex-Carolina, that's the first guy that came to mind?
Yeah. Antoine Jameson was a nice professional basketball player.
I see what you're trying to do. I'm not gonna.
No, like that's just the one that first came to mind.
Yeah.
He was a nice professional basketball player.
Is this because I brought up Manny Ramirez?
He was never special. No, he was nice. That's all. I agreed with you that Manny Ramirez shouldn't be in. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But the Basketball Hall of Fame is a joke. Nobody cares about the Basketball Hall of Fame. The NFL Hall of Fame is kind of cool. They do the thing where they go to the guys' houses.
So that I do think Canton
matters.
I think the NFL matters.
Canton and Cooperstown matter. And I love the thing that they do where the big guy David takes them there, tells them that they're going to make it. Like, that's a cool moment, right? Especially, I think Canton might matter the most because of the thing that these guys put their bodies through. And a lot of times when you see them, when they get in, like maybe they're not doing the best. So I think it's very emotional there. And it's kind of this, it's this reward at the end of obviously this really long, difficult journey. But especially with baseball, the history of that sport, the Hall of Fame matters. Like it's a thing that really matters. Although, we did get a Harold Baines as a Hall of Famer reference earlier.
Yeah,
there's some guys in there that, like, Carlos Beltran's better than Harold Baines, right?
I remember going through having a mini meltdown over Harold Baines on air. You remember that, Shane?
Like,
I
didn't.
Like Beltran's better than Baines.
I didn't get the.
Well, you got to have some Chicago White Sox in there, don't you?
No, you don't.
Why not?
No, you really don't. This isn't the All-Star game. You don't have to have a representative. White Sox didn't deserve it.
Okay, so
Terrible.
I will let somebody talk me out of my feel for Beltran.
I'm not as convinced on it as you are, but knowing some of the guys that are in there, and I do think we don't always remember the positional difficulty. Like not all 400 home run guys are created equal.
He was clutch too,
right? Well, that's why I brought up the 04 postseason. He was unbelievable for the Astros in that postseason. He was so good, and it got overshadowed because they don't end up winning the World Series or anything like that. But that was a unbelievable run for him. He was probably, I mean, he was a top 2 or 3 center fielder in the league for most of his career. Is that fair? And so to me, that probably qualifies as a Hall of Fame. We do the same thing with like shortstops and third basemen. We don't hold them to the same power and hitting standards that we do first basemen and left fielders, right? I think we forget about center.
That's my case. That's my Mattingly case. I've talked ad nauseum about that.
You know, there's different standards by positions. We don't hold catchers to the same hitting standards that we do anyone else, right? And so I think sometimes we forget about center fielders because you do have a handful of outliers like a Griffey or a Mays or whoever else that have this abundance of power that we look at and go, okay, well, why didn't, you know, we felt like Andrew Jones probably should have been a 500 home run guy at the start of his career, and then he ends up in the 430s or whatever he is, and we're like, maybe that's only okay. And then Carlos Beltran is one of those guys that's sort of a victim of his own consistency. He was just really good for a really long time.
And I mean, maybe I have 2013 just burned in my brain, but this is probably when I started this crusade.
Okay.
Right? And that was, I mean, he's walking my team off. He's throwing guys out at the plate. Like, he just was clutch.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to just kind of pulling him up, and his comp was Reggie Jackson. And that really drew my ire.
Oh, yeah, you hate Reggie Jackson.
I mean, it's such a strong term, and it's for a multitude of reasons.
You're really not a Reggie Jackson fan. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm not.
You're pretty out on Reggie.
And although the Cardinals Giants deal and playing last year, like, I mean, Reggie had said some powerful stuff, but.
And he hasn't been too bad recently, has he? I mean, is that where
he's still Reg.
But he's still
that
Reg.
Interview long enough. he's still Reg, which is fine. Like, so I don't really want to judge that. It's just the prowess and the regard we hold him in, and we're willing to overlook a lot of other portions of the career. So I'm just like, we do it for some, and kind of not for others.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I don't have,
but so the problem I have with it is baseball at the end of the day is historically went with the numbers.
Yeah, and positionally he has the numbers to be in.
Salvi Perez, question from Big. Do I think Salvi Perez is? Salvi Perez is pretty right there.
That's a tough one. I'm gonna look up the numbers so I have them.
So anecdotally,
yeah,
like first blush. You can talk me off of it. I say yes.
That was mine also.
I say yes.
I mean, so he's got basically he's a 270 hitter with 270 home runs career. So he probably, I mean, if he lasts a couple more years, probably gets to 300.
It's pretty good offense for a catcher.
300 home runs as a catcher should basically be a no-brainer.
It's pretty good for a catcher.
I don't have his comps up here.
First blush, I say yes to Salvi.
I would agree. My instinct tells me yes. The catching pool's pretty shallow.
Oh, I know.
In terms of Hall of Fame quality guys. And again, you can't compare him to like Mike Piazza numbers. You have to compare it to everybody else. Like you can't compare him to the one outlier. Mm-hmm. Like you can't compare all third basemen to Mike Schmidt. That doesn't make any sense, right?
And catching may have a gap.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It may go Yachty and Salvi and.
Who?
But that's kind of how
else?
I feel about, because that's how it's going to be for pitchers, because the numbers will drastically change.
Yeah, you're going to have to start.
So I don't know what you do after Verlander, Scherzer, and Kershaw.
Yeah, you're going to have to start being okay with guys with 150 wins making the Hall of Fame.
Because, I mean, it's going to change dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, is anybody getting in after Sabathia until those three?
I don't think so. I'd have to look and see the eligibility list, but
the metrics will change.
The numbers are going to be way different, and the writers are going to have to be okay with that. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Coming up next, we got Kevin Kugler, play-by-play voice of everything you've ever watched. Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Kevin Kugler, who's a play-by-play voice for everything. My favorite, I think, is your Olympics work, Kevin. But how are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just finishing up a drive from Iowa City where, you get the chance to sit and contemplate the greater meaning of life, really. And that's what you do when you drive for 4 hours across the state of Iowa. This morning I'm sitting there and I'm driving and I'm thinking about my own demise, which is kind of a dark way to start the day. But I knew I was coming on with you guys, and I'm thinking, if I die, which I assume I will at some point, if I die, I have to manage it because you cannot go in. For example, let's say Damon Benning calls you, Ravi, calls me, calls Shane, and he says, "Hey guys, as I am wont to do, I've rented a hot air balloon, and let's all go for a hot air balloon ride." And I'm like, "Great, that sounds awesome. Time with friends and a hot air balloon." And then we go up in the balloon, and the inevitable happens, like a stick runs through it, and however a balloon pops, it pops, and we crash to the ground. Yeah. And you know what the story is going to be? It's going to be 1996 Orange Bowl MVP Damon Benning and others killed in hot air balloon crash. Wow. And you really have to manage. And that was my thinking this morning. I've got to really manage how I go. Like when I go, I got to make sure I'm around people. Maybe I pay people who are unknowns, and then it's Kevin Kugler and others die at wherever. But I cannot go with Damon Benning because then it's Orange Bowl MVP, 40-year color voice of the Huskers, Damon Benning, and others
40,
die.
huh?
Bad thing.
So, Kevin, that's actually really smart. I'm glad you brought this up because I think what you're saying is wherever you die, you have to make sure you are the most famous person there.
You really do. Like, I need to start checking people on planes as I get on. What do you do? Oh, I'm sorry, you're too well known. We used to joke about this all the time because we were traveling around with Sanchez. Oh, and yeah. I mean, freaking Mark Sanchez and others was going to always be the thing. And I started thinking about the show today. I'm like, Damon Benning would be the same thing. I mean, the Omaha World Herald headline would be Damon Benning, others die in hot air balloon crash. And I mean, and then the whole story be about Damon Benning, and then others unnamed were also killed in this.
It's cute, you guys. It's real cute. Here I was thinking I was going to go back to your government that you used over the weekend, Kevin Astute Kugler. I thought that was
I figured you'd appreciate these deep thoughts on a Wednesday morning.
Yes, I do. I want to start with
as an other. I feel like you would appreciate this.
Oh man! So I want to eventually get to basketball. That was my original thought, but I keep looking at these headlines for the playoffs. And I thought
you were talking about headlines of the balloon crash. I'm thinking, man, you've already got them printed. I can't believe that.
I'm terrified of hot air balloons. We have a mutual friend that has an affinity for them, and we got to get in hot air. No, Michael, we
absolutely no way.
We do not. There's nothing about hot air balloons that I will ever get in. So it's just funny you use that as an example. But I keep looking at all these headlines this week. And I'm far from a Chiefs defender, but I'm now becoming annoyed that they're this gamey underdog, right? Like, oh my goodness. And I like the Bills. I do. I would probably pick them to win. But one of the headlines this morning was, can the Chiefs win in a shootout? You do these games all the time. You're everywhere. When did the Chiefs become kind of like this gamey,
like offensively inept
underdog story, right? Best defense, best quarterback,
best coach,
great front office. Like, when did the Chiefs morph into this non-defending Super Bowl champ?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean,
do you feel
most of the narrative, the first part of the year is, oh, well, these Chiefs are just not as good. They're not anything. They're this. Oh, they're the weakest 15-1 team in history. I don't know where that comes from, other than every time we see some team get great, we cannot wait for them to fall. I mean, it's human nature. No matter the sport, we love the dynasty as it begins, and then we cannot wait for it to be torn down. It's the same thing with our sports heroes. Like, oh, I love watching this guy rise, but man, when he falls, am I going to relish in his misery too? I cannot wait for that thing to fall apart. We are the same way with this, and I've noticed this with the Chiefs. Now all of a sudden, Kansas City is this team that we cannot wait to get rid of. And I tell people every year, is Patrick Mahomes still the quarterback? Is Andy Reid still the coach? Until those two guys disappear from the scene, I'm never going to think that Kansas City can't do something when it comes to winning games in this league. There is such a giant gap between the quarterback of the Chiefs and, other than about 4 or 5 teams, every other quarterback in this league, and it's the most important position in the league. Until Patrick Mahomes isn't in his prime, and oh, by the way, he's just entering his prime.
You think?
So until he's not in his prime, which is several years from now, I think the Chiefs will be able to do this every year. They won't, but at some point they'll come back and do it again. If they don't, if the Bills beat them, and I think that's entirely possible this weekend. Yeah. If the Bills beat them, does that end the Chiefs thing? Or is it a year blip in which the Chiefs had a really good year, got to their 7th straight AFC championship game, and are going to be the favorites to get back to an AFC championship next year? That's what I think it will be, as long as Mahomes and Reid are working in tandem in Kansas City.
The best quarterback in the league has the 5th youngest roster. I mean, when I saw that the other day, I was looking for other stuff, right? I was like, okay, how old are the Steelers? And I was comparing the Vikings, and I pulled like the top 13, and I'm like, I looked at all these teams. I'm like, oh my God, the Chiefs are the 5th youngest team in the NFL, and they have the best quarterback. Like, and I was just getting to the point this week where it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to defend the Chiefs now. And it's like, well, actually, I'm not.
I don't know why. I know we don't. I know we don't love dynasties, even though we always profess to love dynasties. We don't love them because then, well, I want other teams to have a chance. Well, this is the league where other teams always have a chance. But right now, it's the Kansas City Chiefs who have the best player at the most important position. There are other great quarterbacks in this league, and he's going to face one of them on Sunday. And Josh Allen can absolutely go in there and win. Yeah. But if you said to me, Kevin, you've got to put your life savings, you've got to put your hot air balloon fund on some team this weekend in that game, I'm probably going to put it on the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. I mean, I am. Not because I think they're great, but until they're not quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes and coached by Andy Reid, I'm not going to bet against them. It's no different than when Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were clicking in New England. They didn't win every year, but you'd have been a fool to think they couldn't get there every year.
Yeah, it's a little funny as we sit here, and basically the only reliable indicator we have in the NFL is who's got the best coach, who's got the best quarterback, and then we sit here with the team that has by far the best coach and by far the best quarterback, and we go, no, I don't know if they can do it.
Yeah, I mean it's a league designed for the best quarterbacks to thrive, and he elevates everybody on his team. And the youngest rosters thing is 100% true, but we all look at just the stars, and we look at Andy Reid, and he's been around a long time. We look at Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is not the Travis Kelce of 7 years ago. Okay. I mean, other than that, and Kareem Hunt, I mean, these are not long-term staples, especially at the running back position, for this franchise for the next 10 years. They're going to recycle, reload, put new guys in, just like every great franchise does. They don't have to tear down. They're not the Chicago Cubs who win a World Series and go, well, that'll do it, goodbye, and then go into obscurity while the Dodgers spend their way into oblivion and ruin the sport I love. They're not going to be that team.
Just wait for the work stoppage in 27. You're fine.
I'm very excited for that. I texted somebody the other day and said, I think we're going to have a stoppage just to reset this whole thing. Oh, let's defer all this salary till, the end of the earth. Oh, that's great. I cannot wait for Shohei Ohtani to be getting paid $47 billion as the sun explodes 47 eons from now.
Kevin, as we're talking about kind of this coach-quarterback relationship, Ben Johnson ends up choosing the Bears. It seems like he could have had just about any job he wanted. Part of me can't help but wonder if he saw the Jaden Daniels experience and maybe what he gave up there, and he's like, oh, I better latch on to one of these young guys that I like. Ultimately, do you think that's what led him to a Chicago franchise that I don't think is particularly well run?
Well, I think a young quarterback helped. I think that the fact that they paid him $5 million above what the normal base salary is for a head coach at $8 million, I think that helped too. I mean, look, if you are offered the chance for life-changing money and somebody says, here's $50 million, and after 4 years, if it doesn't work, you still walk away with $50 million, that's pretty tempting. And I think he thinks it can work with Caleb Williams. Now, this is a different animal. I mean, the Chicago media is ruthless. They are merciless. They will not let him breathe. The fan base is upset, anxious, and a lot rides on the Chicago Bears in that city. The White Sox are a long way from being good. The Chicago Cubs are content to be 83-79 every blessed year and think that's good enough because they'll show up at 3 million fans strong at Wrigley Field. You got the Blackhawks and the Bulls. They need somebody to carry this banner for this city, and it's usually the Bears that they lean on for that, and the Bears haven't delivered. So there's a lot of pressure on this job. It's a hard job. Now, it's an attractive job. There's some cap space, but here's the thing that makes it not as attractive. Are the Vikings going anywhere? Are the Lions going anywhere? Are the Packers going anywhere? I don't think so. So you're in a division where you start in fourth place. Those teams have cap space. Those teams have draft picks. There are opportunities for them to also make moves, and it's not as if they're going to stand pat. So I think that's a real interesting decision and a calculus to make. I have been really surprised, since we're speaking of jobs, I have been really surprised that the Jaguars job doesn't seem to get more attention.
It's bulky. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it is. It has to be, because there are so many reasons why you would like that. It's still a young quarterback that you might be able to work with, a good roster, a division that's eminently winnable. I mean, that is a winnable division with even a good team, not a great team. And, oh, by the way, no state income tax for your players, which you can scoff at that if you want. For people in our world, it's maybe not as big a deal. But for people making that top dollar, that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty nice little benefit to add on. Oh, by the way, you're not losing anything to state income tax. And I've been really surprised that job hasn't gotten more run. And that has to be it. It has to be that the GM situation is not conducive in some people's minds to success.
K2, and they're just blasting across the television, but I've been talking about them for the last couple of days with the Eagles, and I actually think they're going to be a little too much for Washington this weekend. But I always say, gosh, there's something about them that makes them look so gettable, right? It's like we always poke these holes in Philly, and they just keep winning. When you're sitting in all these meetings and you're doing these games, what is it about Philadelphia that appears to make them vulnerable, whether they really are or not?
Yeah, and I think that's more of a perception. I mean, here's what I think part of it is that they win tough. You know, they win tough games, they win in tough ways, and I think people are accustomed to great teams lopsidedly winning.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, I mean, that's not the case in the NFL ever. The NFL is a league that specializes in tough wins because everybody is usually good and they're all pros. So I've always thought, though, it was a very odd thing to see the Eagles and say, well, you know, they're just not this or they're just not that. Well, they're pretty good and they compete really well and they have a tough quarterback and they have a tough mindset. I just don't know what else you're looking for. I mean, they play in a tough division. They have a tough-minded coach. They are supported by a very hard-scrabble city. I like a lot of what the Eagles have, and I think there's just this perception that because they don't win in a certain way, maybe it's not good enough.
We're talking with Kevin Kugler, who would, without a doubt, be the headliner in any hot air balloon-related tragedy.
No chance. 1996 Orange Bowl MVP and others.
Kevin, I know you watch a ton of Big Ten basketball with your current commitments. Are you, at the end of the year, who do you think is the best team in that league?
Here's the question that I have of the team I think is the best right now, and I think it's Michigan State today. If you said to me, who is the best team in the league, I think it's Michigan State because Tom Izzo has a point guard in Fears that he loves and that is running the team the way he wants them to run, and you see it reflected. They defend, they run, they rebound. That's been the hallmark of the best teams Tom Izzo has had at Michigan State, and this team is doing all three. The question I have about that team, and I think there's questions about every single team in this league and probably every single team in college basketball this year, but the question I have about that team is, at the end of the game, you need a shot. You turn to who?
It almost cost them against Illinois.
It did. And I don't know who that who is. And I don't know if that who exists on this team. Yeah. They have a lot of players that are very good. I don't know that they have the alpha male. Now, maybe you don't need an alpha male when you have 9 guys, but I've always believed, especially in college hoops, when it gets down to that moment, you have to have somebody who's going to be that guy that takes that shot. And that's the one question I have with that team is I don't know if that guy has risen up yet on that roster or if he exists on that roster. But I do think the depth of that team, the style they play, the point guard, the coach, I really do think that team is best suited to win this league. I was really surprised with what Ohio State did to Purdue last night at Mackey. That was stunning to me because you just don't go into Mackey and win games very often. And Purdue is not what they were last year, but I still think Purdue's a very good squad. That one surprised me a lot, and that's probably why I would lean to Michigan State. Illinois, I think, is maybe the most talented roster, but I still have questions about them.
I almost was going to ask a follow-up about Kohler because I was watching Michigan State start to play through him more. That definitely changes the way that they can play, but then you dropped Ohio State on me, and I've been asking this question for about 3 weeks. Is that a good – I think they're good. Is that a good basketball team?
I'm with you. I think they're good, but I don't quite know yet. I'll tell you, I really like Diebler. Yeah. I think he is sharp. I think he is personable. I think he's done a really good job in bringing back the veterans, the former players, all of that stuff that, we've seen over the years at Nebraska. Whether or not that matters or not, I don't know. We've seen concerted efforts to do that time and time again, and maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. I think at Ohio State, you have to do something different basketball-wise to get people's attention. I do think they're pretty good. They have that alpha male, and they have that guy in Bruce Thornton who will take a shot. And they have a lot of pieces. They're athletic and they're smart, and they've got. I kind of like them. I've had them a couple of times, and every time I walk away, and I had them in a loss at home to Oregon a couple of weeks ago. And Oregon's one of those teams that Dana is just working his usual magic with this group because I don't think they're overwhelmingly great. But then I look up and, they were trailing at halftime and they win again. I mean, that's just what they seem to be able to do more often than not. But that didn't really dissuade me from Ohio State. But it's one of those that kind of puts the question mark at the end of the sentence. They're good? As opposed to just saying they're good. I'm like, they're good? Maybe? Yes. I mean, I'm with you, though. I'm kind of in the camp of they need to show me, but then they show me against Purdue, and then I'm still saying, well, you need to show me. Well, how much more do you need to see? I mean, that's the question I keep asking myself about them. But I do like their roster. That's a sneaky good group.
Let me ask you about another one in the Big East. Do you trust St. John's?
No, I don't. And I probably should because I trust their coach, but I don't know if I trust their roster. Does that make sense? I mean, you have a coach that you trust, and I trust him to devise a scheme that's going to work well for a team, but I don't know that I trust the team necessarily to run the scheme that he is going to devise. Now, I do think they're good enough to win the league this year because I don't know what the league is right now. UConn is not what UConn was, just like Purdue isn't what Purdue was, and that's okay. They're still very good. Marquette is very good. I don't know that Marquette is great. I think St. John's has a roster that can win with any of those teams, but I don't know if I trust them completely yet.
Kevin, as you look at the Big East in general, you mentioned UConn being down. We don't totally trust St. John's. We don't really know about Marquette yet. Where does Creighton fit in there for you? Because we've seen them look, especially over the last few games, pretty good to maybe really good. We've also seen them have stretches this year where they're a little head-scratching. Where do they find their place?
I think they're in the tiers of the Big East. They're 1B. If 1A is Marquette and St. John's and maybe UConn, I think they're in that mix where obviously they can beat any of those teams. They just did it to UConn. They're getting better. They're learning how to play without one of their three main guys. And I mean, the evolution of Stephen Ashworth into whatever role he needs them to be in his career has been fun to watch. I'm a fan of Ashworth. I think he's incredibly smart, and anybody who can manage marriage and a kid and college basketball at the highest level, I tip my cap to. I can barely manage any of them, and I certainly don't play college basketball. The marriage is enough for me. Kids are grown, but I still trouble manage them. But to me, that's impressive. And then Ryan Kalkbrenner, everybody knows what these guys do. That's the thing that impresses me maybe the most about Creighton, is that you kind of know what Creighton's plan is going to be. It's not quite Villanova, where you know exactly what Villanova's going to run, and they just used to be able to out-execute you at it no matter what you do. But you've got a pretty good idea what Creighton's going to run. Offensively, Mac has so many different sets that it's hard to prep for all the time. But it's a team that you can kind of get an idea for what they're going to do, and they still beat you at it because Ashworth's playing so well and Kalkbrenner is just so terrific in the post. I like this team. I like the trajectory they're on. I've got them Saturday against Seton Hall, and that's a team that's trying to figure out what they are and where they go, and they are struggling. So that's but it's one of those games too that if you're Creighton, you absolutely cannot lose that game. Yeah. If you have designs on the Big East, you cannot lose your pink out game on Saturday to Seton Hall, and that's the next test for these guys. But they're on the right path. They are on the right trajectory, and I've noticed in the world of social media, their fans now are talking a lot more. There was a time in December where they didn't talk as much, probably right after Nebraska beat them soundly at home. And so they kind of went away, and now they're back again, and they're conversing again, and they're feeling their oats a little bit more, and they're reminding Nebraska fans that Nebraska hasn't looked particularly good in the last several games. And then Nebraska fans go, yeah, well, we beat you. And then, of course, it devolves into you've never won an NCAA tournament game. It's great to see that no matter how many years you're away from this on a daily basis, that it all kind of just stays the same. The faces and the handles change, but the conversation is still always the same. And it's sort of nice. I'll think about that as my hot air balloon is crashing in the sands of western Nebraska, where Shane and Ravi and I are going, oh, we're going to be others, and Damon's holding his MVP trophy high as we fall down.
Hey, real quick, K2, who do you trust? Who's in bigger trouble, Indiana or Iowa?
Iowa's in bigger trouble. Minnesota put a blueprint out there last night for how to slow them down. Now, they were terrible from three. They're not always going to be that bad from three, but they just, the lack of defensive abilities or interest at times for Iowa has to be frustrating for everybody involved, because that's a talented team. Freeman is good. Harding and Freeman have a great chemistry. Peyton Sanford is as good a shooter as there is in the conference, had an off night as most of that team did last night. But and it's the same thing I would say about Nebraska right now. If you can't defend at some level, you're not going to win very many games in this conference. And Nebraska is not defending at all right now over the last 4 games. They cannot defend the three, which has plagued them greatly. And, if you cannot defend at a high level, when you have an off shooting night, you're probably going to lose games. And I don't know if Iowa is going to be able to sustain that kind of offense throughout the course of a season without dropping a few games like we saw last night.
According to Kevin Kugler, Iowa is the Shane Schillerberg of the Big Ten hot air balloon. Kevin, we appreciate it as always. Have a safe rest of your drive back, although you're by yourself, so you'd be the headliner. So that's good.
No, I would be. I'm thinking of just going right into a bridge right now so that I would be, so I'd at least be that. Although with my luck, I'd hit the bridge and, 5 birds or something would fall off the bridge and be like, man kills 5 rare eagles.
Just don't have it be the one by Madison County, because Clint Eastwood or somebody will get some headlines.
You would definitely not be the headliner against the bridges of Madison County, Kevin.
No, bridges of Madison County destroyed by man. Yeah, who knew the Orange Bowl MVP, Damon Benning. That'd be the story.
All right, Kevin, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk
Goodbye.
to you later.
Thank you.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, DB gave out a couple more winners last night, Tennessee and Texas. Maybe I need to take a little advantage, make a little money off of what my guy DB over here is doing. Got to get over to Warhorse Sportsbook. Check out the casino in Lincoln or in Omaha, and they've got you covered. Whether it's just your straight lines, your money lines, your parlays, your spread, whatever you want to do, they've got you covered. Check out warhorsecasino.com for promotions and a full list of house rules. DB.
I have to start by I'm a little pooped.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, I didn't get to my question with K2 about Nebraska and USC tonight.
He threw us off a little bit with the hot air balloon thing, if I'm being honest.
You know, because he just was in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Los Angeles.
Yeah, and he had SC. He's had Nebraska multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious to get his thoughts as a pretty paltry. Are they a 6-point fave?
Ooh, let's look.
I think
let's see what we got here.
I think they're a 6-point fave. Aaron hasn't sent me anything this morning, so I don't know where his head is.
We don't know what he's thinking yet.
He usually has a feel for Nebraska.
I've got Nebraska at 5.5.
5.5? Does that sound right to you?
It honestly feels a little high.
What?
Nebraska's not playing very good.
You think 5 feels high?
I think 5.5 feels a little high.
Well, I smell bad.
I would have made it like 3.5 probably. Nebraska's not playing very well right now. I don't know how you can give them that much of a benefit of the doubt.
I'm back in the friendly confines, and I get it. They just stubbed their toe there.
I don't know. I don't feel great about it. I don't feel great about 5.5. I'm not saying they won't win, but 5.5 feels a little heavy to me.
Wow.
Personally.
Denny Downer.
I'm just saying.
Does 7 feel right for St. John's?
7 for St. John's. Yes, I think so. I don't love Xavier.
I don't even know if Xavier's any good.
I don't either, and I think St. John's is pretty good. It's at home. Well, Madison Square Garden. It's not at Carneseca, but I mean, ESPN's got it 7.5. 7.5 seems right. I think.
What time does that tip?
That's a 6. That's an early. That's 6 p.m. on FS1.
So I wouldn't call 6 early anymore.
What's the early one? Is it 5:30 or 5?
Yeah, there's 5s now.
There's a handful of 5:30s and 5s.
But I'd call 5:30 early. Probably
all right.
Now.
I mean, that is 7 o'clock local time for.
Which is bad with the 8 o'clock tip because that's still 6 o'clock for Southern Cal.
Which is not terrible for them.
No, I'm trying.
Oh,
to
you're saying it's too good for them.
Yeah, kind of like. And who is it? Where is Miami? Miami is going somewhere.
I'll look.
And like
your favorite Miami Hurricanes?
Yes. One moment, please, Mike.
Yep. Miami is headed to Stanford. That's a 10 o'clock tip, so 11 Miami time.
Can you believe that?
And Stanford is a 10.5 point favorite, which actually seems low.
It doesn't seem like enough.
No, because Miami is god-awful.
Yes, they are.
Yes. They are.
Yes, they are.
Truly.
I knew they were going someplace crazy.
The dog doo-doo.
Miami traveling to Stanford.
The country.
For a weekday conference game.
At 10 p.m.
They
have lost 7 in a row.
Look at some of the scores, though, my God.
Oh, it's brutal. The last one, 117-74. Before that, 89-54. Before that, just 10-point loss, 88-78. 15 before that. They did take it to 1 point against Virginia Tech, lost by 10 to Boston College, and lost by 4 in overtime to Mount St. Mary's. They lost in overtime to Mount St. Mary's, which I would have to look up and make sure that's not an NAIA school. I'm pretty sure it's not.
What do you think of Mount Union?
No, I'm thinking of St. Marty's in South Dakota. I always confuse St. Marty's and Mount St. Mary's. They're very similar.
Yeah.
They did beat Presbyterian. Good for them. That broke up a previous 7-game losing streak. That's a bad basketball team.
It's kind of weird.
They might be the worst basketball team in the country.
And
in terms of major conference, that might be the worst basketball team in the country.
Do you have? Can you pull up you have KenPom open?
Yeah, I've got it up.
Who's the highest rated Big Ten team?
Highest rated Big Ten team it's not
Michigan State?
It's not Michigan State. They're lower than I thought. It might be Illinois. Illinois is 9. Just off the top of my head, I'm looking back. Illinois at 9, and then Purdue at 10, and then Michigan at 12, and Michigan State at 14. You've got 9 teams between 9 and 14, or 5 teams between 9 and 14. But Illinois, Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State in that order.
Gonna be interesting week.
You know who the highest ranked Big East team is? The metrics don't love the Big East this year.
I'll go with. You know what?
Who are you going with?
I'll play it safe and go Marquette, but I want to say St. John.
Marquette is correct.
Okay.
They're 13. St. John's is next at 20.
I'm not bad.
Creighton is next at 32.
I'm not bad.
And then Connecticut at 35. I wonder if Connecticut's Ken Palm would be higher if the refs
schedule wasn't. What happened to our internet? Are you running?
I think so. If the refs didn't dislike Dan Hurley so much, they'd probably be higher. In the
Is your wireless on or off?
Mine's off. I think. I don't know.
Good answer.
I'm plugged in. That's all I know.
What happened?
What happened?
That doesn't have anything to do with the Steelers, Shane.
Are you sure?
Well, they haven't been on television this morning.
Are they gonna sign Sam Darnold? What are they gonna do?
I don't know, but watching the replays of this game, I think Philly puts it on Washington.
Yeah, it sort of feels like Cinderella's about to lose her slipper here with Washington.
Is that crazy?
No. I think Philadelphia is a lot better than Washington. And I think Washington has been not fortunate. They've played well, but I think they've sort of maximized what this season can be. Like, let's not forget this is a team that took their last possession to win 5 games in a row before sort of handling Detroit in the divisional round. I think maybe we put too much value in Detroit's win over Minnesota and thought that it meant they were healthier and more ready to go than they were. That's a team that was pretty banged up, especially defensively. I don't know that you can – I don't put too much value. Like, it was a great win for Washington, but I think that told me more about Detroit than it did Washington.
Jaden Daniels since December.
Mm-hmm.
This is according to ESPN on the morning show. 7-0 record, 15 passing touchdowns, 0 turnovers in the red zone.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
That'll get it done.
I know some guys like to just read stats and give information, and they don't like to cite sources.
Or watch games.
And I don't want to be that guy.
That's from ESPN.
Or gal.
That's from ESPN. Currently on ESPN 2, under D's Notes, which is a funny play on words.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
No, I think I tend to agree with you on Philadelphia. I think that's going to be sort of a statement game for Philadelphia, although I don't know how much value I put in a statement where if you had told me coming into this thing that Washington was going to get stomped in the playoffs, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. They sort of felt like a borderline playoff team. I don't know. Year one under Daniels, I think this is about their ceiling. And they reached it, and good for them. And
now your feel good story. We were just riding with this dude. Now you're all of a sudden out.
No, I'm not out. It's just I think this was their ceiling this year.
No, you're probably right.
I'd be more shocked if they made the Super Bowl than if Philly waxes them.
Although, how about if the Commanders are 1 win away from being in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that's wild. I don't even know what to do with that. But if you look back, there's some really strange teams that make conference championship games.
Rejoice.
Look, I don't know what the rejoice was. I don't
rejoice that they're there. What strange teams like who, Ravi?
I mean, like Mark Sanchez making AFC championship games. Like if you go back through the years, there's some randos that you're like, yeah, they're probably not one of the 4 best teams in the NFL. That happened. Like, it's not as, because we do this in the NBA a lot, we do it in the NFL a lot, where a team will make a conference championship and we think, oh, all of a sudden they're going to take that next step. Sometimes making the conference championship was
step.
Was it, right? We did this with the Trailblazers, like in one of Damian Lillard's years, where it's like, oh man, they could take the next step. And like, nope, that was the ceiling. We do that a lot. There's some randos that make the conference championship games.
I just look at them defensively, and I don't have a ton of confidence they can slow Philly down.
Absolutely not. Do you have any locks today?
No, not yet.
All right, check. Make sure you check DB's Twitter.
Yeah.
He'll put some locks out later.
I'll put it out there for you.
Or maybe he'll put them in on betting bites. We don't know. We'll see what happens. Coming up next, though.
Ooh, betting bites. That's a plug.
We're going to talk to Amy Williams, head coach for Nebraska women's basketball, here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by the head women's basketball coach for Nebraska, Amy Williams. Coach, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm pretty fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Coach, how are we doing? You're on a little bit of a roll, man. You seem like you're in a good spot.
Well, yeah, we've been playing pretty well, so we'll see if we can keep things rolling. It's every night it's a new test in this league, man. It's just it's a grind.
Yeah, we got you one day before we get Coatney tomorrow. So full disclosure, I'm glad you get to get all the good stuff out first, because that way he can't. Coat won't be able to claim it.
He's going to steal my thunder. This is so good. Thank you for the timing then, you guys.
Oh, we appreciate you. We had tried, and, your folks, they were like, oh, last week was going to be tough. And like, okay, we'll take whatever we can get because we know she's pretty busy. And lo and behold, I didn't know you were going to have the gutty win on the road in a place that's tough to play in Iowa. And then you come home and you handle business against Wisconsin. Like, you're right. It's a tough competitive league. How important, I got to go back to 2 games. How important was getting a tricky one at home or on their home court with such a tough place to play, even though their league record isn't great?
Yeah. It's been really, it's important. I mean, it's critical. We'd had a couple of really tough road losses. We had, when we looked at our conference schedule and we knew that we were going to have that road game at Georgia Tech, which was a home and home return right before the Christmas break. Yeah. And then we were going to come back from Christmas and go out and play number 1 and number 4 in the country on their home courts. We really needed to prove to ourselves that we could win on the road. And so, but an hour before we leave to go to Rutgers, we just have, kind of devastating news for our team with Allison Widener going down again. And it was just gut punch. And I've been a part of a lot of programs and teams and in the past where, something like that would really derail you for a while. And this team was just bound and determined to show a little more honor to Allison with the way we played than that, and they just really wanted to kind of channel some things to win for her, and so to go on the road and get that tough win at Rutgers and kind of prove to ourselves that we can do it, I think that really catapulted and helped us go win on the road over in Iowa City as well.
Coach, this is interesting, and you get it because you're so close to your basketball team, and between Widener and Potts, I mean, it's devastating, and you're fixing things on the fly while you're developing your depth. You mentioned the weekend in California where you're paying like 3/5 of the all Big Ten team in back-to-back games. It's a pretty good bunch for you as you look at your team. Which for you have been kind of tougher or give you a better indication of who your team is? The bounce back physically in the actual games, seeing back-to-backers on the road like you did, or the internal resolve of overcoming, teammates' injuries to help get you to where you are?
That's such a great question. And, I feel like it's that internal resolve. I really feel like it's just that motivation, the love that this group has for each other, and then just that resolve, just internally to say, I am going to, go out there and channel my inner Natalie Potts, channel my inner Allison Widener. I've got to find a way to bring the toughness that they brought to our team. And I really feel like it's kind of just that internal kind of resolve on this group to be able to kind of just fight for each other, and something that's pretty unique and special. And I wish I could just, bottle it up, because, every team doesn't have that. But I think that has led to some of the actual, just what looks like a little tougher performances out on the court, and everybody finding ways to come in and contribute. If it's a rebound here, or if it's a diving on a loose ball here, just making a big bucket here. It just seems like everybody's finding a way to say, I've got to bring something to the table.
Coach, part of overcoming all of those issues has been the emergence of Britt Prince, especially over the last few weeks in Big Ten play. She's really starting to emerge. What have you seen just in terms of her development that's allowed her to seemingly take a little mini leap over really since the new year?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that she's starting to get a lot more comfortable with what we're trying to run offensively, what our schemes are, what our, when to call what plays. Like, we kind of give our point guards and, the guards in our program the freedom to be able to make reads and calls on the fly. And so that takes a little bit of time to get used to about when is a good time. And I think for a little bit of time, she was maybe not thinking about how can I score the basketball, but how can I run the offense? And but I think the more and more comfortable she's gotten with just, okay, this is how this is going to flow. This is how we're going to play. This is how I can push pace. And now I know how I can play my game and just go make plays out of the offense. I think she's starting to really be aggressive minded that way, and thinking more about, where can I be aggressive and do the things that I can do within the flow of the offensive scheme. But the other thing that's just been such a pleasant surprise is just everything we've challenged her with. Coach Hannah Mays is kind of, one of her position coaches, and, she's asking, Britt, I need you to rebound, because when you rebound down the floor, then we can get going and play with a little better pace on the offensive side of the ball. And next thing you know, she's getting 7-8 offensive rebounds or defensive rebounds, helping lead our team in rebounding. I think our last ball game, she tied for
she had 6 on the defensive end alone.
Yeah, right. And when she does that, it's just such a double whammy of positive for our team, because, it's we're securing a rebound, which finishes the defensive possession. But she is so good about being able to push pace when she comes away with defensive rebounds. And that's a big impact on how she's changed here over the last few weeks as well.
Something I definitely know for sure over the last 33 years of knowing you is you're very competitive. And I watch your team play, and you're developing a superstar, a highly touted superstar. She's coming along. You've overcome a couple of key injuries while you're continuing to grow your depth, which is flat out ridiculous. On any given night, somebody different can get you. That has to be about practice, right? Like, there has to be something that's going on when you guys are rolling the balls out with drill work and your scout, where you're saying, okay, if it's truly next man up, we are practicing that way too. Because I don't think people realize how hard it is to develop high end, fill in the middle, and then get role players to continue to get better too. Like, man, that is tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And I've had, people say that one of the things that they think is unique about our program is the way we just instill confidence in everybody. And we really try to do that. We do not, I don't spend a bunch of time really talking about that's a bad shot for you, or that's not, whatever. It's okay. If that's the type of shot you're going to take within our system, then let's get in and work on it. And I just have to credit my coaching staff has just done an amazing job. But the young women that are in this program are just hard workers, and they're as competitive as I am, Damon. I know you know that competitiveness. You've known it for a while, but the young women we've brought in here have that same competitive spirit, and they want to be the best version of themselves. So what that has equated to is lots of players, and it might be Kendall Moriarty, who, maybe played 4 minutes in this ball game, but yet the next day she's coming in and asking Coach Mays, can we get in the gym? Can we work on my ball handling? Can we work on my shot? Can we get some extra shots up? Do you have time to watch film with me? And then next thing you know, she comes out against Wisconsin and leads us in scoring and has 17, and just is a huge spark for us. It might be against Rutgers. We needed her to come in and use her length and athleticism to defend against Kiyomi McMillan, who was going off on us a little bit, and be the chaser in our defense, and whatever we need. And they have a willingness to say whatever the team needs for me to do, and I'm going to keep working outside to make sure that when the opportunity does come, I'm ready.
Coach, you mentioned that competitiveness and those girls, that they fight and they grind and they work hard. Obviously, that doesn't happen by accident. How do you find those players to recruit? Because I think that's the hardest thing to evaluate when you're looking and recruiting for players. Like, what are you looking for that allows you to find those players?
Well, that's one thing that every one of my assistants would tell you is, do not send me to go watch a kid that doesn't play hard, because my husband and I have talked about this since the day I met him, but he's like, how many players have you ever watched that did and now they do? And it just doesn't really happen that way. And, I think that's something that's kind of just in you and instilled in you, and it's something where you kind of got that type of work ethic, and it's really, really hard to put that into somebody. So that's something that my staff knows. Like, do not send me, no matter how talented they are, to go watch a kid that can't keep it hooked up or just doesn't want to compete and play hard and have a passion for the game. I think that's half the battle. And then, we can work on helping improve some skill and things like that. But that's just one of the characteristics that we really, really is kind of a non-negotiable for us in the recruiting process.
Coach, I'll get you out of here on this real quick. You got to kind of do you like the one and dones kind of moving on with playing everybody in the conference?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Do you like the schedule set up with the playing everybody once in the conference?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be interesting once we get all the way through it, but I think it is kind of unique. With just, in the beginning, kind of knowing that it'll always be Iowa twice for us, which, I think is, we're quite familiar with their program and they're quite familiar with ours. And, so that's, but I think, it does present kind of a unique challenge each and every game, but I think it does kind of even some things out with just I know there's a lot of coaches right now saying, oh, but we had to play these guys at home or these guys on the road. But to me, that's the only discrepancy, as opposed to, we played 4 of the top 5 teams in the league twice versus, 4 of the bottom teams in the league twice. And so I think it's really been able to kind of level some things out. And, every game, I feel like, oh man, it's a whole new scout, and I got to watch 15 new game films, and whatever. But it's certainly been fun.
Coach, we appreciate the time. Good luck this Sunday as you try and pack the PBA, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, that sounds good. Have a good day, guys. Thanks.
That's Coach Amy Williams, head coach of Nebraska women's basketball. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.